It's disheartening. Another international meeting, another missed opportunity. The world had high hopes for INC5, which is short for the Intergovernmental Negotiating Committee, which was meeting for the fifth time in South Korea last week. Many believed it could pave the way for a global treaty on plastic pollution. But in the end, there's no agreement. At the closing, the chair of INC5 tried to put a positive spin on it.
Let us always remember that our purpose is noble and urgent: to reverse and remedy the severe effects of plastic pollution on ecosystems and human health.
Hold on a second. That sounds familiar. Just a couple of weeks ago, COP29, the climate summit, ended with a somewhat similar message about urgency, severity, and saving the planet.
There is no time to lose. On climate finance, the world must pay up or humanity will pay the price. Climate action is not optional, it's an imperative. Both are indispensable to a livable world for all humanity and a prosperous future for every nation on Earth. The clock is ticking. I count on you.
We need the resources to put solutions into action. And everyone has a role to play. We rise together or we fall together. Let's make COP29 count.
This calls for urgent actions and warnings about our doomed fate on the planet Earth echo across speeches, articles, and forums. Yet, after hearing them again, do they still carry the same power as before? I'm Fei Fei, and this is Climate Watch, the podcast where we break down big climate questions with insights from experts and industry insiders. My goal is to help you better understand our planet and inspire action, big or small. By the way, I've also launched my newsletter on Substack called Rivers and Mountains. If you want to keep in touch, you can also find me there. There has been a troubling development in the efforts addressing climate change. Last year, polls across Europe revealed growing green fatigue, and it's not because people care less about climate change, but more because they are overwhelmed. For many, climate change isn't just a future threat. It's already hitting their wallets, their jobs, and their sense of security. Energy transitions and green policies often feel like personal financial burdens, and in their views, with little support from governments or industries. And it's not just Europe. In China, a survey by Phoenix News found that relentless natural disasters, we saw 20 floods in just 3 months this summer, and they have exhausted rescue forces and stretched public attention thin. So when people are tired of hearing and talking about climate change, momentum slows. Donations decrease, governments downgrade climate priorities, and progress stalls. Then, what do? Some researchers are calling for a shift in climate storytelling, from fear and warnings to hope and possibility. One of them is Professor Wang Bingbing. She's now the Associate Dean and Research Professor of Institute of Carbon Neutrality at Peking University. I recently attended one of her workshops in Beijing, where she introduced a new initiative aimed at infusing optimism into climate narratives. And in this episode, I sat down with Professor Wang to explore her approach and how positive storytelling might better inspire action. Can we first start with telling us how did you get involved in the conversation in climate change in the first place?
Oh, yes, it's a good question. So I think it's in 15 years ago. At that moment, I worked for an international organization and really enjoy help the people in rural area, to reduce the poverty. And thus I can travel around China and talk with the local people and know more about the reality in China. And then one day, my director at that moment told you that, hey, there is a big conference in Copenhagen, and we would like to send you there. And we have an international delegation. I say, what's the topic? And he says, climate change. What's that?
That was still a very new topic at that time.
even in China, not so many discussion about climate change, and so I think at least I should know more climate reality in China, and thus I visit a small village in Gansu. So my question is very simple, just ask people, hey, do you know climate change? I ask a lot of people, and seldom, they told me directly, yes. They will say, like this, especially in the cities. And then in the small village, I also have no expectation, since the people, well educated in the city, they cannot tell me about what climate change is. But I met a farmer there, and he is a elder farmer around his 60. And I just, asked the question, hey, could you please tell me what climate change is? But he said, yes, I know. I said, wow.
Wow, how did he know?
And he dragged me to the field and showed me the corn there. And he said, see, in Gansu, usually there are 9 droughts in 10 years, right? But you're in these 10 years, almost 10 droughts in 10 years. So no rains, and usually told me is in March there will be some small rain and help him to plant the corn. But he said, see, this year there were no rain, and in March there was a ice ball, so destroyed everything, and I will have no fruits from the corn from my plants. So it's like I just waste my time here because of this kind of extreme weather. So you can see climate change is happening here.
That was in 2009. 2009, and a farmer here in China has already witnessed.
Witnessed.
Well, many of us stayed pretty much unfamiliar with the topic at that time.
Yeah, and because they witness.
Well, I want to fast track till now. It's been 15 years. And I don't want to be a pessimist, but there are a lot of reasons behind that. Why is that even though in the field for over 15 years, even though with a lot of experts, international organizations, and even some governments advocating that we need to take actions to mitigate or fight against climate change, yet we are seeing very little progress in the field?
Very little. I cannot agree with you. Because as I observed, there are a lot of progress. And for example, 15 years ago, the farmer, he experienced this kind of disaster, right? The extreme weather disaster. And then he don't know how to adapt to it. It just, I have to accept it. It's kind of a destiny. But nowadays, there are a lot of program help the farmers to adapt to climate change. And in China, the government also released the National Adaptation Plan. Yes, to help the rural area to address climate change, and also help the city, we call it as a resilience to the climate crisis. So based on my research, in China, the awareness on climate is much, much higher than the other countries. And more than 90% of Chinese people, they at least heard of climate change. And they support the government to address climate change. And they also would like to take some small action, although not so big. And the key point is that when we ask them, do you like to pay much for the climate-friendly products? And they will say, it's up to how much I can earn. So, but at least, we can see, compare with 15 years ago, at the government level, we have different kind of policies, and also low carbon pilots around China. And not only the government, but also the other multi-stakeholders, even the local community in the rural area, when they design their developmental plan, how to considering climate change in their plan. Thus, if in the coming 10 years, there will be more and more extreme weather disasters, then when they build up their buildings, they should think of this kind of condition. So this kind of dialogue and consideration, and also the private sector, they have their projects on climate action in their supply chain, how to reduce the emission, how to help the consumers, to change their behavior. Yeah, it's kind of a systematic transitions in China. At least I feel I have a lot of colleagues around me from different stakeholders. But I can also understand your point from a general public's perspective. Yeah, how can I take action? We still need this kind of connections to help the individual connect with the group who take real actions or provide solutions to them.
That's a very interesting point when we're talking about making the connection between the public and all the stakeholders you mentioned, is that not only here in China but around the world, people heard a lot of warnings coming from experts that, the climate change could kill us eventually. It was awakening in the first time you heard that, but after hearing that for a decade, 2 decades, people get tired of hearing such warnings, and a lot of them, I think, are steering their attentions away because, well, maybe it's just too depressed to hear about we're doomed eventually, or they're just hearing these warnings but not knowing what to do, and that's also can be frustrating at the same time. So they want to turn their attention to something more positive. So how would you take on these disconnection between what experts and governments and international organizations want people to do with what people can actually accept and actually take actions?
It's a good point. I can tell you a story first, because in 2019, I was selected for a global female leadership program, Homeward Bound. And every year they will select 100 female scientists around the world, and after 1 year coaching, and then send them to Antarctica for like exchange and also exploring the climate crisis there. So I was one of them in 2019. And why I want to participate in that program is because the point you mentioned. Because so many people, in China, they have higher awareness, right? And based on my research, I think, yes, then you have awareness, you should take more actions. But actually, there are a huge gap between higher awareness and real action. So I also feel frustrated, and I talked with my mom. My mom, as she understands, I'm working on a very weird field because she cannot understand climate change. What's that? But finally, around like after 10 years, he understands, oh yes, I also heard of climate change, and a lot of people talk about it, the media and the government and the people around me, they began to talk about this topic. So she double checked with me, hey, so what I can contribute? And I said, yes, mom, you can save water, save energy, turn off the light when you left the room, and lower the air conditioner and take a bus when you go out. And she said, I don't need you to tell me to do this kind of things, because in the traditional Chinese culture, we were told, it's our daily life.
She's already doing that.
Yes, yes, that's my job, to help people take action, but I really cannot provide, creative ideas, action points for people. So I felt that I was in a very difficult time, and this is why when I selected to the program, I feel I should share my difficulties, challenges with the sisters around the world, because they are all science-based. Maybe they can help me.
Can they help you?
Yeah, it's so I shared the story on the ship, during the exchange session, and they said, yes, we can understand you, because in my country, they're from almost 30 countries, and all of them said, hey, we have the same situation, same difficulties in our country.
But they can't really...
They have no creative idea as well. It released me. I realized, it's not only in China, it's around the world. It's a common challenge we face. We face a common crisis, climate change, and now we face a common challenge. No one knows is there any new actions?
But I have to interrupt here, is that for international bodies like UN, they have a lot of methods on hand, I would say. When we are talking about green development, talking about sustainability, they know to do transit to new energy or saving water, as you said, recycling. They have these methods, but somehow we are not seeing them really carried out in all sectors of the society. Why is that?
As I observed based on my research, I found that most of the time now the narrative is all the communication strategy from UN, from the academia, and from NGOs. We use only one strategy, threatening. Like, oh yes, if you don't take actions, climate change will extreme everything, destroy everything, and there will more and more extreme weather disasters, floods, droughts. At the very beginning, it makes sense. Like in 2009, when we talk about this kind of extreme weather disaster, is still new, right? And especially when we heard, oh yes, the iceberg is melting in Antarctica. Oh yes, it's terrible. Although it's far away, but at least at that moment, this kind of information is new, is strong, is shocking. But now, after 15 years, we're still repeat this kind of narrative. It's a bit old. And for people, from a psychology perspective, usually when people feel terrible news, the first reaction is not, yes, I should take action. It's, yes, I should escape. I should go to other place for safe for myself. So this is the problem. The narrative is too old. And action as well. Like what I told my mom. Save water, take bus, and turn off light, lower the air conditioner. Yes, it's easy to take action, but it's boring. Right?
And also a lot of people been taking those actions and they didn't see very phenomenal results.
Yeah, yes. And anything else I can do? This is the question they usually ask me. So this is the point. And also, echo your first question is what I'm doing now is set up a new lab. I just released it in COP29. The name is Climate Future Global Innovation Lab, and the short name is CFORCE. Like when we talk about carbon neutrality, it's a future, around 2050. And point, everyone talk about carbon neutrality now in China, because I work in Peking University, and a lot of businessmen and organizations, they come to me and say, hey, Professor Wang, could you please tell me the pathway, show me how I can do. I say, hey, to be frankly, if anyone, they told you, they can tell you the pathway, it's a kind of lie. Because the goal is new. No countries, no nations, no people, they have the existing pathway towards the goal. We know till 2050, the second half of the century, if we cannot reach the carbon neutrality, the temperature rising will reach 2 degrees, and then a lot of species on the planet will disappear, and for human, this planet is not a suitable, home for us. So this is why we have to show the flag there in around 2050 as a goal for all of us. Yeah, we should try our best to reach the goal, but how is up to each nation's contest. It's up to your company, your organization's contest. And this is what my suggestion to this kind of partners. Hey, I cannot tell you where the pathway is, but I can co-work with you, collaborate with you to explore the pathway together. Yeah.
Reminds me of a saying in Chinese as 摸着石头过河, touching the stones while you're crossing the river. Is basically what's happening with mitigating or adapting to climate change at the moment. So in this CFORCE lab you just initiated, what are some of the actions or projects that you had in mind when you launched this lab?
Yes. So I have 4 pillars. In my mind, the CFORCE lab is a space station. It's welcome different kind of spaceship from different kind of stars. Actually, it's like cooperate with global partners.
Is that a reference from a movie?
Star Wars. So the core value is 3C leadership. It's also the idea is because I'm a big fan of Star Wars, and we all know like may the force be with you. So the force is inner calling, right? And in Chinese ancient wisdom from Confucius also talk about 修己达人. It means that you should find yourself, then you can help other people. So it's very similar with may the force be with you, right? I develop a 3C leadership. 3C is curiosity, courage, and compassion. Like I would organize the leadership training program for the global youth, for young generation, and help them to, hey, be ready for the future, because net zero future, you will be the leaders around the world. But the most of the time when we talk about the climate crisis, it's so huge. Like as individual, we will feel powerless. I have so many energy to address such kind of huge crisis. So this is why I highlight 3C leadership. You should ask yourself, like, why you want to do this kind of big battle with climate change. Do you have curiosity to the big world, and do you have courage to address different kinds of difficulties in the process? And do you have compassion to understand the people around you, understand the world, the nature, the nature suffering? So this is the core value. And also this is the for new actors, as I mentioned, there are four pillars, new culture, a new agenda, new actors, and new narrative. And the global youth is the new actors. Like to identify the new actors who can take action or who can show the leadership and help us to reach the net zero future 2050. And besides global youth, like in China, the civil society also very active on climate. So we can help them to see the C-force leadership and also understand the policy better domestically and internationally, and play a more active role to address climate change, and also the second generation philanthropist. And you may heard that the first generation, they now their age is a time to retire, and their daughter, their son now take the bait to move on, but they don't want to repeat their father and mother's story and business. They want to
innovate.
Yeah, innovate. So if we can show them, hey, where the future is, you are experiencing this kind of global green transition, and to reach another kind of culture paradigm shift, they can find their own business. It's totally new, but they can show their leadership in this kind of global green transition trend. So this group are the new actors I identify and would pay a lot of attention. And for new culture, it's another pillar and also very important, because nowadays we talk about climate change. We usually said it's because of fossil fuel. As my reflection, when humans found fossil fuel, they are not dirty. They also came from the mother nature, right? They are animals, plants, and they are fossil under the earth. And the human find it very excited because we need energy, to survive on this planet. So, oh yes, we found the energy, we can use it. Let's use it and use too much. And at that moment, the scientists cannot perceive the climate change. It's a kind of lesson. And now we find the renewable energy. Yes, it's from the sun, from water, from the wind. It's also from Mother Nature. And we are so excited now. But if we cannot learn the lessons from the time when we found the fossil fuel, we may repeat the mistake. If we use too much, if we forget to show our respect to nature and make sure that we use the renewable energy to benefit not only human, but also the nature, the planet, then maybe another crisis will happen. Yeah, so this is why I highlight culture. And why we use too much fossil fuel is because of the industrial revolution, right? The whole system, culture system and the industrial system is also from that point. So the industrial revolution just push people to consume a lot, produce more, as much as you can, and thus to shape the consumers' culture nowadays. And we want a lot. So this is the culture paradigm shift I mentioned. Now around the world, there are a lot of like experts, leading experts, they have this kind of reflection. What's the root of the problem? If we call the different kind of crisis, biodiversity, climate change, and this kind of environmental, what's the root of this kind of crisis? It's because our culture paradigm shift should change, should realize that human, to be frankly, we are only one of the species on this planet. We are not the master, and we should show our respect to the nature, to the planet, to other species. So this is eco-civilization.
So I want to make sure that I get it right, is that in your eyes, the root cause of this climate change or global warming is not fossil fuels itself. It's more of how we use. It's us, really. Unlike many environmentalists or activists around the world that are calling for, stop using coal altogether and shifting towards other renewable energies, now you are questioning that maybe there is something wrong with the whole system, no matter what kind of energy we use. It's just we are on a learning curve of the renewable energies that we can't really predict what would be the ultimate consequences of using those energies, like how we use coal.
Yeah. And I'm not trying to say we develop renewable energy is a wrong direction. It's right. We find the coal, we find the oil, and now it's almost end, and we cannot use it anymore. And if we want to survive on this planet, we have to find a new energy. And we also, based on this kind of technology developing, and we found that, yes, the sun, the wind, the water can provide more energy. It's a great point, and we should develop technology. And also, we talk about AI nowadays, how to use AI to develop more pioneering technology to use renewable energy. It's a big topic. I also embrace this kind of development. But my only reminder is that we also should highlight the other point, from social science perspective. When we look back, the Industrial Revolution was a basic problem, as when we called climate change, we call it human cost. So it's human, we use too much, we want too much, we produce climate change. And now, if we still, we have no reflection on our lifestyle, on the culture style, we still use too much, want too much. Then renewable energy,
we would be just repeating ourselves.
Yes, that's it. So this is my big concern.
Then what do you think is the solutions to this?
The interesting point is that, when we talk about how to rebuild the harmony between nature and the human, I came from Shandong province, and it's a hometown for Confucius. I just realized, in Confucius, book, it's highlighted this kind of principle thousands of years ago. In the root of ancient Chinese wisdom, we have this kind of environment. And I also look around, in Europe, Aristotle also talk about how to show our respect to the nature. And in Africa, in this kind of developing countries, they also have ancient wisdom. The people in the ancient time, because they have no technology and they understand more how to show respect to nature. I'm not saying that we should go back to the dark days, we have to fight against the monsters. But at least if we say that the history is a kind of mirror, now is a time we show our respect and reset up the connection with the Mother Earth. Otherwise, human, as a species, one of the species, one day we will disappear from this planet as a dinosaur. Yeah. And the other species will enjoy this planet. We fighting against climate change. It's not like we should save the planet. Planet is always there, but it's human. We should save ourselves to make sure we can survive. So this is the point. And another point is that I found, even in the Forbidden City, guide showed me on the roof how the ancient people save the water, how they protect the fire. I say, hey, why I cannot find this kind of wisdom on the modern architecture.
but on a 600-year-old architecture.
Yeah, so it's a kind of, they are still living. Yeah, so this is a very interesting point, and I'm initiating a new program on the lab, like together with global partners, to say, hey, we can use the ancient wisdom to address the modern challenge. Then can we really find some living evidence in China and then made in other countries, in Asia, in Africa, Europe? I'm sure they also have the ancient wisdom.
Yeah.
Yeah. And thus we can really use the ancient wisdom with the living evidence to help ourselves.
And you think it would be a more inspiring stories to tell the public of what people can actually do and take real actions in these climate change conversations, and not just trying to scare people and most of the time scare them away.
Yeah.
And
This is the fourth pillar, new narrative. So from new culture, new agenda, new actors, the final outcomes is produce new narrative from negative to positive. The planet is our Mother Earth. Yeah, everyone enjoying the home together. So only complain and only showing fingers is not, it's useless. If we think, yeah, count me in, I always remind myself, yeah, count me in, then I always want to do something to contribute, right? Although maybe I only have 1 cent, but at least I can contribute my only 1 cent. Yeah.
Is that the reason you call yourself a stubborn optimist
Yes.
in these climate talks?
That's it.
And you think you will continue to be these stubborn optimist
Definitely.
down the road?
Definitely.
And you believe that in the future, eventually, humans can do something to save ourselves.
To save ourselves. We have to, right?
Wang Bingbing's work reminds me of a related effort in cultural sustainability. Back in 2013, UNESCO adopted the Hangzhou Declaration, which emphasized the critical role of culture in sustainable development. And since then, there have been many notable developments. One success story is with cultural tourism. It is now accounting for 40% of global tourism revenue. But of course, more challenges lie ahead, like striking a balance between economic growth and cultural preservation is a headache, especially for countries with fewer resources. A huge thank you to Professor Wang Bingbing from Peking University for sharing her insights and her stories. And thank you for listening to this episode of Climate Watch. If you have any questions about climate change or suggestions for future episodes, you can reach out to me at fei.fei@cgtn.com, fei.fei@cgtn.com. I'd love to hear from you. Or you can just find me on Substack by searching Rivers and Mountains. Also, don't forget to subscribe to this podcast for more updates on what's happening to our planet and what we can do to make a difference. Until next time, stay curious, stay hopeful, and take care.